Now, what's really interesting, as my text is cut for you guys. What's really interesting is that with all the different media options between here, X, live streams, everything, we have a huge community of YouTubers, podcasters, essay writers, people like us, people like John Carter, Dave Green, Astral, and all kinds of people. And I think the coolest thing is to be able to build an interconnected community where we discuss all types of things together and work on ideas in a way, kind of create like a giant digital salon, which is for the most part going on in like the overall sphere. Um, there was one thing I kind of wanted to think about, and I was thinking about while working out this morning. Um, every time I log in the last week on X, and even here, there's just a lot of negativity and a lot of darkness, and you have just I get videos after videos of racial violence, specifically black on white violence, all pertaining to the Shiloh thing we talked about in the last episode. And it just makes me feel disgusting. It makes me feel, I feel angry. It makes me feel resentful and just exceptionally negative to the point where like I don't want to. And right away, in the back of my mind, the accusation comes from, I would say, certain people on our side on the right that says, "Oh, here you are, Mr. Christ cuck. You're gonna lecture us about you know you're gonna lecture us about turning the other cheek and apologizing." And I have no desire to do that, and that's not at all my intention, because I have those kind of things in the back of my mind too, right? Like, how do you turn the other cheek? But I think it's important to realize that, like, yes, you can be angry about certain things. You can be angry about political issues. You can be angry about evil actions on innocent people, all right? But at the same time, it's very important for us to avoid becoming consumed with resentment. There needs to be a distinction between a just, righteous anger and allowing that resentment to destroy you, to eat you from the inside, because it's not right. It's not how things work. So you can be angry about politics. You can be angry about things in the world. You can be angry about the behaviors of individuals against the innocent. You can be angry about government entities and government, sponsored wars. You know, however you feel about that, whether it's the war in Ukraine or Palestine, Israel. And you can be angry, righteously so, and you can, at the same time, still avoid slipping into negativity and resentment. You can come up with solutions and administer justice, and the justice can be swift, it can be violent, it can be absolutely necessary without resulting in like hatred and resentment in your own soul, right? So that's something I've been thinking a lot about, and I don't really have the answers. I don't really have much of anything, really. It's something I've been pulling up books and reading a lot on the last like 48 to 72 hours, and I'm trying to see how I can not ignore the news. My fear, and like I said, I'm gonna get slapped around by like the pagan types, right? Is that you can easily slip into doing this kind of thing. Well, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to be a surfer bro Christian, a surfer bro guy, and just not be angry about anything. I'm just like, oh man, I pray for my enemies, and I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I feel like that. Like, there is absolute reason to be angry at people. There's absolute reason to be angry and disgusted at the way the world is today, right? Um, but I think that the risk is allowing that anger to consume us, to where every day we wake up in the morning, we open our get our phones, and we're scrolling through X, and it's just like negative, fucked up video after video after video after video, and you're eating your breakfast and you're just furious about the world, and you're getting in your car and you're just, you know, and I mean, I say this from experience, right? So I don't know, maybe you guys, if you listen to this or whatever, you can hop on the comments later and there, there it is, right? It is, right? It is huge, right? Like, we need to be able to acknowledge that. We can't just, like, be like, "No, nothing's going on, nothing's happening." There's no, like, legitimate concern, right? Which is what, like, if you watch the news, mainstream news, mainstream stuff, that's what they tell us to do. It's not happening, it's not happening, or it's happening, but it's good, you know? Um, but at the same time, we cannot be consumed by that, because then we become goblins. We become trolls dwelling in anger, and that's I can feel it. I can feel it in myself, where I get caught up in these, like cycles of, like, just resentment and hatred. There was a video, like a quick, like, little, I think, YouTube video by Father Josiah Tremens. He's a Orthodox priest out of Riverside, California. He's pretty big on, like, like the Orthodox kind of sphere, and it was maybe a day or two, and he talks about a Romanian monk that was persecuted by the communists in the 60s. He was arrested, thrown in horrendous prison, and when they were arresting him, he when he was in jail being tortured and all that stuff, the prisoners with them were like, "Why do you call the guards brother?" And he's just like, "Well, they're our brothers. They're not our enemy. It's the enemy that's our enemy. It's the darkness that's our enemy, right? And if you let this, like, monster of resentment consume you, it's riding on your shoulder constantly, and it's slowly draining you of life and energy, and slowly destroying your spirit, right?" And that's kind of my fear. My fear is that we need to balance the balance of righteous anger with not allowing that anger to turn into pure, like, soul degeneration, right? And a part of me sometimes just wants to just turn off the internet completely, right? I don't want to even talk about anything. I don't want to I don't want to even think about any of this stuff, right? I don't even want to, like, I don't even want to, like, I don't want to write about it. It's just, sometimes it disgusts me, and it makes me feel disgusting, right? So, a good example, I recorded we recorded an episode on Wednesday, which came out on Thursday, with John Carter, and, like, the 2 days before it, I was just like, "Man, I don't want to talk about that Shiloh, Minnesota thing at all. I don't want to dwell on that." But, it's important. We had to talk about it because it is a very critical thing, and we talked about it. I think we talked about it in a very, very positive, good way. And then we spent 2 hours talking about Japan and how we loved, both myself and John Carter enjoyed living in Japan, and all the cultural differences and all that stuff. And I think, I was listening to that episode when I was editing, and you could tell that, like, our mood and our voice and our enjoyment of the conversation completely changed when we went away from just the contemporary, like, cultural filth, that that issue, and we talked about everything else, and I enjoyed it so much that, we usually try to keep the episodes under 2 hours, or, we go from, like, 5 p.m. to 7 Eastern time, and we ended up going, you know like, for an extra, like, hour and a half past schedule, and we completely lost track of time. So I think that's where we got to find the balance where we have to address these issues, and then, you know, not let them consume us. All right. Uh, I was listening to Dave Green's last podcast that he puts out every other Tuesday, and Dave, he, you know, he talked about a lot of, like, the drama with, like, the cool, right, and all the issues with, like, the inner fighting and that kind of stuff, the elite human capital, right? And he did a fantastic, like, takedown of that kind of those ideas and that kind of group. And it was great. It was a great 2 hours of listening on my way to work and on my way home from work, and a little bit when I was at the gym. And, I wrote him a message, and I was like, "Man, it was a great episode, But man, I'm so tired of it, dude. You know what I mean? I'm so tired of it, right? I am so tired of like, I don't want every single like podcast, every single episode to just be about like these negative inner fighting or just mess, you know? I want to learn, I want to talk about building stuff. I want to talk about guys writing great books, great political books. I want to talk about, your local community stuff and what you're doing. I want to talk about you guys go to church or your other groups that non-religious, right? I want all that stuff. I'm just tired. I feel like we risk because most of the people that listen to us and including us, right, tend to be on the right, different shades of right wing outside the conservative mainstream, right? We in a way we kind of won, right? Like with the current election, JD Vance and all that, we're kind of on the winning side to a certain degree, right? And now what? What's next, right? We, it has to be something beyond political, right? There has to be a cultural element that we need to move forward, right? Um, if you look at like the last 4 years before this current like vibe shift or whatever, the the progressive side won. At least they won the election thing, right? And when the question was posed, "What now?" It was nothing. It was just a giant fart, right? It was just more of the same kind of corporate uh, Cal Arts looking universe that they gave us, right? And we were just kind of sick of it, right? So now we had a vibe shift. We have an overall cultural change. So what now? Now it's our turn. Like, me, you guys, right? We got to figure out what's next, right? We got to figure out the direction. We're all not going to go in the same direction, right? We're going to go in multiple directions, but at least we got to do it. We can't just sit there and blah because the lamest, most opportunistic, most shitty people on our side, when this question was posed in the last 2, 3 months, what did they do? They turned on us. They turned on each other, right? Because they themselves had no answers. They ran and started creating drama and they ran and started creating, New York Times, article, opinions and that kind of stuff against our greater, like, subculture, right? Because pathetic people do that kind of stuff. So we need to be different. We need to be like, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to find something new. It's time to really build communities at this point. And I know a lot of you guys are doing it, right? And that's awesome. And like, that's what we need to focus our podcast about. That's what we need to focus about. Stuff to read, stuff to do, real action to take, real community to build. All right. Anyways, this was an experiment. I've never done this before. I honestly decided to record, I don't know, hit the live button like 5 seconds before I actually did it. I didn't even know how it worked. So if you guys enjoyed it, let me know in the comments or something. Might do this more often. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And if you go to church, make sure you go to church, guys. Have a good day.